With the release of Drehmal Primordial Apotheosis Beta, a lot of weapons got changed. Every single legendary in the game now has a custom ability, and some of the abilities for mythical weapons were changed. And so today, I want to talk about what I believe to be the top buffs that some weapons received. Now, this means that a weapon that was previously maybe not super good or very niche has become much better and is now maybe 2 times, even 3 times as good than it was previously. So the first of these weapons I want to talk about is actually not a weapon, it's a tool, and that is the Heartaxe. Now the Heartaxe no longer has Efficiency 6 built into it, however instead it has the new ability called Lumberlust. Now what Lumberlust will do is it will give you stacking haste, up to haste 4 role-breaking logs. Now the cool thing about this is that you can actually stack this boost with efficiency, and if you have efficiency 5 at haste 4, you will instantly chop logs. Maybe axes are super useful in Drehmal, maybe you don't need wood for a lot of things, but if you do need wood, whether it be for crafting or building blocks or whatever it may be, Heartaxe is like twice as good as it was previously because of this change. The next weapon is the Frostfang. Now, at first I actually was not big on Frostfang. I mean, I was not big on Frostfang at all in 2.1, and going into 2.2, seeing its ability, Tempest's Grasp, didn't really sell me at first. Now, freezing mobs for a short time on your first melee hit, I thought that might not be that useful. It wasn't until I actually started experimenting with it that I realized it actually is very useful, because its usefulness shines once you get to Lodar. In the overworld, most mobs will not be super hard to take out and don't really need to freeze them. However, on Lodar it's a different story. We have mobs like the Tremorliths, like the Lunar Envoys, and even maybe Twilight Envoy that can just be temporarily frozen at the very start of your fight with it, and that makes it so much more manageable. It also isn't too bad against bosses. It gives you a couple seconds where you can really just wail on the boss. And all around, Frostfang just went from being a failed main weapon that really did not serve any use to being actually good utility. The next weapon that I want to talk about is actually a mythical, and that is Malevolentia. And yes, I do pronounce it as Malevolentia. Now its stats got changed in a positive way. It lost some of its max HP, but it makes up for it for having half the speed penalty that it did before, from negative 0.04 to negative 0.02, and you know, if you stack a Stone of Worry onto this, then it's actually not that big of a deal at all. It goes to negative 0.01. On top of that, its new ability, Infernal Ground, is absolutely fantastic, and you should be using this. It sees its most use in boss fights, like Ultimate Hobbitier, Osign, and Emissary, because what it will do is it will just give you a free moment to charge up the ability to its max strength, and at max strength, it gives you resistance 3, which is 60% damage reduction from all sources, which is fantastic. That's just 60% DR to everything. You're taking less than half the damage you would previously for quite a long time as well. As long as you stay within the radius and boss fights, this is absolutely fantastic. Malevolentia went from probably being the weakest mythic to one of the strongest. Speaking of weak mythics becoming extremely strong, I also want to talk about Frenzy. Now, Frenzy was probably the weakest mythic in 2.1, because its ability was pretty bad. It had a super long cooldown, and the timer on it didn't actually refresh when you killed another mob. This is changed in more ways than one now. Not only has its stats greatly improved, its attack damage went from 9 to 13, and the max HP deficit went down a bit from negative 8 to negative 6, which is pretty cool. Its ability is now super overpowered, okay? Not only does it last longer, but killing additional mobs refreshes the timer, and when the timer runs out, instead of the ability ending immediately, it just goes to the next tier of damage buff down. So if you're at +9, it just goes +6. And then if you're at +6, it goes +3. And then when you're at +3, that's when it actually goes on to cooldown. So Frenzy is absolutely insane right now, and I definitely do expect the devs to nerf it for the full release of 2.2. But in the meantime, you know, you can enjoy a super busted Frenzy in the 2.2 beta. Before going on to the weapon that I think got the most buff in the 2.2 beta, I want to give 2 honorable mentions. Now, the first of these honorable mentions is Osteogenesis. Before I used to clown on Osteogenesis super hard, but now with its ability Cleaving Maelstrom, it can actually fare decently well against mobs that are not undead, because this ability doesn't just do damage to undead mobs, it does damage to any mob type in a pretty large radius around you. And so now Osteogenesis has gone from just being very, very niche and only good against undead mobs to actually being able to hit pretty much anything with its ability. The second of these honorable mentions is to Calamity. Now, Calamity did receive a couple of changes. The height on its ability was actually decreased, and it no longer synergizes with Avsom Cole, which is upsetting. However, it did receive some good buffs. The ability damage was greatly increased to 24, which is fantastic. And the cooldown on the ability was also decreased. It went from 60 seconds to 45 seconds. If you slap a Stone of Agony onto that, the cooldown will only be 30 seconds. So half what it was in 2.1. And so the height decrease on the ability is not that big of a deal considering its cooldown was pretty much halved. Okay, and the final weapon, the one weapon that I think got buffed the most in 2.2, is actually not a mythic, it's a legendary, and that is Masayoshi. Before, Masayoshi was just an above average sword, but now it is absolutely incredible, and I fully expect them to nerf this. The HP deficit was completely removed in favor of its giving you a speed increase, and its DPS was greatly improved. In fact, it has the same DPS as Frenzy, given that Fatal Rampage is not active. The downside of Masayoshi is its ability where you take self-damage when you use it. This can actually easily be avoided. If you use Parenkaima, that will actually give you HP back on every kill. And if you don't have Parenkaima, then you can just eat maybe a golden apple or use a regeneration pot. Your options are a bit more limited if you're not using Parenkaima, which is why I would highly recommend that you use these two items in conjunction. But Masayoshi is the big showstopper here with its fantastic DPS. Again, I fully expect them to nerf this because it is insane. It outdamages pretty much every mythical except for Frenzy and maybe Mythbreaker. And so there you go, those are 5 weapons plus a couple of honorable mentions that I think received really, really good buffs in the 2.2 beta. Of course, everything is subject to change because this is a beta, and some things may be altered for the full release. But for now, I just wanted to talk about what I think are the weapons that got a major upgrade. And yeah, that's about it. So I'll see you later. Peace out.